Hey guys, welcome to Charlie's How-To for Homeowners. Today we're going to be going over if you have a running toilet. We'll be changing out the canister gasket since a lot of newer toilets are coming with those instead of flappers. We'll show you how to change those, as well as the fill valve and the supply line along with that. All right, so first off, let's kind of talk about what we are going to need for this little project. First things first, you want to make sure that your toilet is running to help identify the part that needs to be replaced. So right here we have toilet tank leak detector tablets. They're super easy to use. Basically, it just comes in a little packet. It comes in two, but you only need one. So you just rip it open. There's a little blue tablet in there. It's just a dye tablet. It's not going to be harmful to your toilet or anything like that. You want to drop it in as close to the flapper or the canister as possible. The reason for that is because that is most likely where the problem area is going to be. That's where the water tends to leak through. So that's just to ensure to see where your problem area is. Otherwise, other than that, we're going to need a new gasket. We like to use the Kohler brand. We're working on a Kohler toilet, so try and use the same manufacturing parts. You're also going to need a new toilet fill valve. This is the big bobber looking thing that's inside your toilet on the left-hand side, as well as new supply lines. Now I have two different sizes here because sometimes you need a different size. One needs to be longer than the other. So I have a 16-inch and a 12-inch. Now the importance with this is that you want to make sure that you have the correct side that's going to screw into the angle stop. The angle stop is just that emergency shutoff valve down at the bottom of your toilet. So there's two sizes. There's a 1/2 inch and then there's a 3/8 FIP. That just means the female side. So that'll be screwing on to the angle stop. Other than that, you're going to need a one-stop wrench. You can get this guy at Home Depot. It's very inexpensive. So it screws apart. This side is for replacing angle stops, which we're not going to be dealing with today, so you need the smaller guy. The reason why you need this is because when you're tightening it back on, you want to make sure not to strip the nut around it. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult to come off. It can leak as well. And one of the last things that you'll need is a pair of channel locks, preferably a smaller size so that you can kind of fit them in there a little bit better. Sometimes there's not a lot of room down at the base of the toilet. And the only other thing is a vacuum. So with this guy, you're gonna have to flush the toilet and get as much water out of there as possible, but it's not gonna get all of the water out. So you'll need the vacuum to get the rest of the water out, because when you take that fill valve off, you're gonna have a hole in the base of your toilet tank and all the water's gonna fall through. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're at a Kohler Cimmaron toilet. The first thing you wanna do is shut off the angle stop and flush the toilet. That way when you flush the toilet, it doesn't keep filling back up on you, so we can take the parts out. So I'm gonna turn it off from this side just so you guys can see a little bit better right here. Go ahead and turn it to the right. So that is now in the off position. And then we can flush our toilet. Might wanna hold the handle down just to get as much water out of there as possible. Should be good to go. All right guys, so now we got the toilet flushed. We're gonna go ahead and take off the tank lid. I like to shake it off a little bit before I take it all the way off, because some water will be on the underneath of it, and it kind of spills all over the place. So put that down on the ground, nice and gentle. You don't want to break the porcelain. So like I mentioned earlier, you're going to need this vacuum. Get the rest of the water out of there. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. You can go ahead and dump that later. But for now, the toilet tank is empty. We have a good visual on all of our parts. And now we can move forward to removing the fill valve and replacing the supply line as well. And then we'll go ahead and move forward with the canister gasket as well. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and undo the supply line. Now, it's best that you have a little bucket under here. It might not catch every little thing, but you know, it's definitely less of a mess to clean up later. So these are fairly, they're not loose, they're just like a good hand tight. So you should be able to undo them with your hands. So you just go ahead and unscrew that. Now, like I said, some water is going to come out, not a whole lot, just a bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that one stop wrench that I told you about. This is a Rigid brand one stop wrench. We'll come down here at the top of the angle stop. Go ahead and just start unscrewing it. The whole thing is going to move, but it is unscrewing. Now keep in mind, you never want to reuse a supply line. They have rubber gaskets in them that are really only meant to be used once. Even if you have a brand new supply line on there, it's still best to, if you have to remove it, just put another brand new one on, because it might not leak right away, but you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and find that your bathroom is flooded. So now it's loose enough to where I can get it with my hands. Again, some more water is going to come out, but so we went ahead and got the supply line off now, and then we'll go ahead and move back up to taking the entire fill valve out. All right, so there is one more nut underneath the fill valve right here. It is where the supply line was screwing onto. This is where you're going to need your channel locks. So this is basically what's holding the fill valve to the toilet, and then the supply line just connects to the bottom of the fill valve. So let's go ahead and get that guy undone. Now mind you, keep that bucket underneath here, because as much water as you vacuumed out of here, there's still going to be just a little bit left in there. So almost got the nut all the way off. All right, so that is the nut that we just took off. It does come up this way, so you just take that off, and then now we can go ahead and disconnect the flush valve. So we'll just take off this little hose that is on the canister. All that does is come off, and you can see this is already nice and loose. It's going to come right out, nice and easy. As you can see, a little bit of water is going to drip out of it. That's totally okay, it's totally normal. I'm just going to go ahead and place this inside of my little bucket. And then while we're here, let's go ahead and get the gasket off of this canister. So we already have the hose removed. This guy right here, you're going to turn it. Now, it might feel like you're going to break it. Just be really careful with it. Don't force anything. Obviously, if it's old, it might need to be replaced, but so that's what you're going to do. You're going to go ahead and pull that guy out. And go ahead and just flip it upside down. And this is the gasket that we are talking about. So we'll go ahead and take that gasket off. Throw that inside of our bucket. Go ahead and get our new Kohler canister gasket on here. I'm gonna put it right back on the exact same way you took it off. Now there is like a little lip that it slides into. So as you can see, looks nice and even around the whole gasket. You can go ahead and make sure you keep this part in here. We will flip it back over, and it's kind of hard to see, but there is a certain direction you have to put it in. Very easy. You just slip it right back in, give that a nice turn to the right, Now the gasket's been replaced and we can go ahead and put on the new fill valve. So here at John Stevenson Plumbing, Heating and Air, we like to use the brand called Wolverine Brass. They have really good products. This is going to be our new guy right here. And the new hose that goes to our canister. So as you can see here, it comes with this extra nut on it. You don't need to worry about that. You're most likely not going to need it. Just gonna step that off to the side for now. This is going to be that plastic nut. This one's just gonna be a metal one instead. So we'll take that off. I'm just gonna slip that right back in there. I like to keep the adjuster kind of angled in. You don't want to really keep it right here or right here. You want it so that the hose nipple is just coming straight to the other one. So it sits in there pretty easily. Go ahead and thread that nut back on. You get it nice and hand tight. Right. It's a little easier to give it a little wiggle as you do it. We'll go ahead and take our channel locks. Get back underneath. Now it can be kind of confusing because it's upside down. So you'll be threading the opposite way. You just want to be careful. You want to hold this guy because there is a chance that it will spin with the nut. And you really only want to give it a couple turns. It doesn't need to be super, super tight. You don't want to break the porcelain or anything like that, but as you can see, it's nice and solid in there. Next thing you're going to want to do is put the hose back on. Now this hose, as you can tell, is a little bit long. The reason why they have these little clips, this is for the older style toilets that have flappers. The different flush valves, this would go attached to the side of it like so and spray directly in, but we don't need that anymore, so we can go ahead and take this guy off. You will have to cut this down. I have just a little utility blade on me. You can use a pair of scissors, doesn't matter. Whatever works easiest for you. It doesn't need to be, you know, the perfect length. You still want some slack in it. So I'm just gonna take off a couple inches. All right, so we'll slip it onto the fill valve. Push it on as much as you can. You wanna make sure that that guy's not gonna come rushing off on you in the middle of the night. This is pressurized water. I see it happen all the time, but it usually comes off of the canister. We'll make sure that guy's on nice and good, nice and snug. You give it a little wiggle, a little pull, make sure it's not gonna come off, which doesn't appear it's going to. So the next step now is to go back to the side over here, and we're gonna reconnect the new supply line and then reintroduce water to the tank. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead for this toilet, I'm gonna use the 12-inch Wolverine Brass brand toilet supply line. Just a general rule of thumb, I like to always start from the fill valve first. I just find that it's a little bit more sturdy when it comes to having to bend the supply line. And remember, this guy, it just needs to be really good hand tight. You don't necessarily need any tools to crank it down. So as you can see, or maybe you can't, I'm using my fingers, literally, to tighten it down. Once I get to the point where I can't use my fingers, I just wrap my whole hand around it and just give it a nice couple turns. And that's really as tight as it needs to be. Next, obviously this thing's kind of stiff, so you might need to just kind of bend it a little bit. shape it to where you need it to go. We'll screw this guy on. Again, go hand tight. Now with this one, this is where this tool comes really important. This is what I was talking about earlier, that you don't want to strip this nut on here. This is a flange wrench, essentially. So you want to go ahead and tighten it down. Now it doesn't need to be super crazy tight either. Obviously you don't want it loose. You don't want it super tight either. There's something kind of right in between. So you'll get to the point where it starts to get a little bit of a struggle. That's probably pretty good. You can give it a nice little push, but you're not going to Hulk strength it on. So obviously it's going to have that little bend in it. That's totally fine. All right, so now that we have the new supply line on, we can go ahead and reintroduce water to the tank. I like to go a little bit on the slow side. Let the water reintroduce to the fill valve first. Now it does take a little bit longer than normal, as we didn't have any water inside the tank before. Generally with the fill valve, you want it about the height of the top of the tank. Sometimes it's a little bit higher since there is an extra about an inch with the lid. But if you do need to make adjustments, there is a little clip right here. You just squeeze it in, you'll drop it down, and then you can literally pull this guy up and down, and it's on an adjuster. So it goes up and down. This little guy is for making very, very minor adjustments to the water level. So as you can see, the water level is not exactly where we want to be. There is a marking right here that says the water line. That's where it should be. So we can go ahead and push this guy down, let this guy come up, lock it back into place, let it fill up a little bit. It's just about that water line. Like I said, this is for the minor adjustments. If you turn it left, it goes down, which would mean a lower water level. If you turn it right, it would come up a little bit. So let's just get it to that water line. Perfect. All right. So now we got everything put back together. I don't hear any running water or anything like that. Now this is the time that you would inspect for leaks. Give it a nice flush. You can grab a flashlight, a phone, any type of light really. And what you really want to look for is at the base of the tank, just to make sure that that fill valve is secured in here. You want to make sure that your supply line is secure, no water coming out of there, and then make sure that it's not leaking into the bowl as well, which it is not. So good for us. We have no leaks right now. We got brand new parts on. We can go ahead and put the toilet tank back on. And that is our minor toilet repair. All right guys, the last thing I just want to go over real fast is the flapper replacement. It's basically just the same thing as the canister gasket. Some might say it's even a little simpler, but this little chain right here, it's going to hook to the end of the handle rod. We'll just go ahead and take the old one off, put this one on. The flapper will come right out. It's just got two little hooks that are on the fill valve that this hooks onto. Take it off, put it right back on. Easy fix, easy swap. That's basically it for the flapper. Now the entire process is the same. You still replace the fill valve, the supply line. The canister gasket will not be there. The flapper will be in place. They do the same thing. It's just a different style of toilet. So I just wanted to go over the two different things that you might run into, either the flapper or the canister gasket. All right, thanks guys for watching Charlie's how-to for homeowners. Again, you can use those dye tablets to put inside the tank to double check your work, make sure that that gasket isn't leaking. Other than that, thanks for watching with us. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great night.